Hi everyone, my name is Courtney McCormick. This is for COM 4020. This is reading assignment number 4, video quiz number 2. This week we touched on nonverbal communication in organizations, social media, as well as dealing with difficult people. So for question 1, what are the 2 most important items you learned about nonverbal communication that you did not know before reading the assignments? Use specific examples and details to answer this thoroughly. So, one of the articles I read it had a list of nonverbal cues. I found that these were the most indirect, but they actually influence your employers and employees really heavily. Personal space is one of them. Personally, I have to have personal space. This article referred to personal space as your bubble, and how you act when someone tries to enter that bubble. Usually, it's just who's around you and who influences you. If someone's really close to you, you might feel uneasy. That might be a nonverbal cue. I just found this really interesting because I didn't know that would be a nonverbal cue when it comes to communication in organizations. According to Goldhaber, there's 3 different principles that actually sum up the use of personal space in organization. The more and better space you will have regarding your higher position with the company. So if you're on up the chain, you're going to have more space. You're going to have a better protected territory, and it'll be easier to invade territory of lower status employees, I found that pretty interesting, which is true. And you can even choose how the environment is, the environmental space is maintained while in an organization. I found that was really interesting because personally, I'm really sensitive when it comes to people getting really close to me. I actually back up away from them. It happens a lot. So, and the other one that I found really interesting was about the nonverbal cue of environment. And it pretty much says how you arrange things in your environment, like your desk, your chairs, your furniture, pictures, whatever. It can really affect how people respond and communicate with you. I know there's some organizations that will sometimes have a social area and then personal areas, which are like cubicles. Many times I noticed even in school, depending upon how the desks are set up, it can either make me feel like this teacher doesn't want anybody to talk, or if the desks are all together in like a circle, she encourages active discussion. So I really believe this, and I found it interesting that it was on this. Really depending, like if a office doesn't have many windows, it's kind of dark, you might not feel very comfortable. Paintings, artwork on the wall, it really just depends, and I can understand why this was on the list of nonverbal communication, because I really think it influences this. So number 2, why is nonverbal communication relevant when studying communication in organizations? Please be specific and use detailed examples in your response. Nonverbal communication is so relevant and so important in organizations just because it affects how the employees and employer responds to certain needs. When someone says something like, "I'm fine," in a sassy way, are you going to believe that they're fine, or are you going to believe that their tone of voice, that nonverbal cue, is more important? According to Forbes, Darlene Price says, in some studies, nonverbal communication is shown to carry 65 and 93% more impact than the actual words spoken. And I believe that because the emotional attitude that goes into some things in organizational discussion can really mean a lot in a company. And that also involves clients, other employees. And also higher up the chain, management and supervisors can also really understand why and how an employee is acting just based on their nonverbal cues. I know another thing, I know I say a lot, hiring management will look at nonverbal cues. So they look at hand gestures, professionalism, the way you act. They don't necessarily look at the way your content that you're giving them. They'll look at your nonverbal communication to see if you're the right candidate for the job. Moving on to question 3, select 2 of the remaining readings that are posted that are not related to nonverbal communication. Please discuss the most beneficial information related to organizational communication with each one of them that you find the most beneficial during your video quiz.